Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega. I'm here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today we're going to be talking about happiness through self-help resources, and we have a very special guest with us today. Barry Schoenbaum is a commercial photographer based out of Toronto, Canada. He is the author of an inspirational coffee table book titled Hope and Heroes, Portraits of Integrity and Inspiration. I just want to show you this book. I was looking through it before. It's a very beautiful book. Dr. Jane Goodall, Wayne Dyer, so many famous people here. It's a really wonderful book. And Barry is also a radio talk show host. He's got a program called Sunday Morning with Barry Schoenbaum in Ontario, and on the internet at www.barryschoenbaum.com. And the radio show in Ontario is on at 11, or is it on the internet, 11 to 11:30?
Live on the internet, 11 to 11:30 every Sunday morning.
Every Sunday, great. Okay, Barry is also an inspirational speaker. Now, Barry, before we begin, welcome to the show.
A pleasure. Nice to be here in White Plains.
Great. Now, before we begin, would you like to tell us a bit more about your work?
Well, I am a professional photographer. I'm author of the book Hope and Heroes, and I also do inspirational speaking. My degree is in photography, but with what I went through in my life in overcoming adversity, which brought me to other ventures, including a little bit of juggling, and on top of that, brought me to some happiness through coming through a lot of suffering. Right,
and that's what this show is going to be about. Basically, tell us, apparently you were diagnosed some time ago with a bipolar condition that, created problems in your life. Could you tell us a bit about that and explain to the audience who may not know what bipolar is about, something about that?
Bipolar is an extreme mental illness with extreme mood swings. When I was 18 years old, I had a breakdown. I spent the whole summer in the psychiatric ward in Hamilton General Hospital. They knew I had some issues of delusions and depression. They didn't know what was wrong with me. And then 3 years later, on the way to see my psychiatrist for my weekly appointment, I had a manic attack. And after that manic attack, I went to see my doctor, and I was talking a mile a minute, like people do when they're in that phase, and the doctor diagnosed me. I spent 3 more weeks in the hospital, stabilized on lithium carbonate. For about the next 16 years, I was fine on that medication, and then taking a break from it because when you take lithium for 20 years or so, you may lose your kidneys. I went off the medication. I had another serious breakdown in 1986. Didn't work for 2 years. Nearly checked off the planet at that point. Somehow made it through with a lot of hard work and by the grace of God, and then transformed out of the illness into health. I'm not a medication, and this inspired my book, my speaking, and I transformed human being through a lot of suffering, from suffering to happiness.
Right, and our show today is about how you used a lot of self-help resources for this recovery, and we're going to get into that in a while. But before that, can you explain the basic challenges that the bipolar condition presents? Certainly, with the depression, there's that kind of limits or makes it much more difficult to experience happiness.
Sure, bipolar was previously known as manic depression. The more politically acceptable name now is bipolar. It is a serious mental illness that has extreme mood swings. When your average typical person has a depression, maybe for minutes, days, or longer, you get out of it. Someone who suffers from clinical depression or bipolar, the depth of it is so low that you may not get out of it without the help of medication, which helped me out. The other end of the coin is if you're not seriously depressed, you're seriously high and maybe walking on water and also acting extremely inappropriate. So it is a serious mental illness that has both sides of it. Neither one of them is grounded, but I gotta say, being manic is a little more pleasant than being depressed, but neither one is really that good.
Right. Yeah. Because I understand with the manic side, there are actually instances of euphoria, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. But I imagine that becomes just perhaps too much energy and difficult to control and all. Sure.
Well, I could tell you briefly what happened in my first of my 2 or 3 manic attacks. Many years ago, I was driving to see my psychiatrist, driving my Austin Mini, wearing cutoff shorts and a T-shirt, and the car ahead of me had massive amounts of exhaust fumes. This is back in Canada many, many years ago. Please don't do this at home. I thought I was a police officer, and I flagged the woman off the road, and I went over and said, "May I see your driver's license?" And she gave it to me, and I let it go with a warning, and I didn't know what I did was inappropriate. That is how someone who is manic may think they can walk on water, fly through the sky, be a police officer, and as I say, you know, a little bit of humor, neurotics build castles in the sky, and psychotics move in. I moved in for a bit there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and obviously, you know, without that kind of like a shift in reality, that's going to impinge on happiness. Just if not for other reasons, like just, you know, it's difficult to work and relate to just, you know, society in that way. So then, like you said that like sometime around 1987 or so, there was a turning point for you. Could you explain how that turning point kind of like helped you to regain your happiness? You know?
Well, the turning point was a crisis in my life. I had a serious breakdown in October '86, and I'd given up my will to live, and I seriously considered suicide. And 1 in 7 bipolar patients, unfortunately, actually do that. Luckily, in my case, I'd read and believed that you cannot kill the soul, so I try to kill the body if I can't kill the soul. So I suffered, went very low, didn't want to live, and somehow through the pain and suffering and the fact that I had been in many years of psychotherapy, and I started to read in the library on psychology and psychiatry, and I say, by the grace of God, it wasn't just on my own work, somehow in the soup of the whole situation, after the suffering and all the learning and everything, the illness lifted out of my life. Sometime in 1988, I went off medication now about 17 years ago, and it was a transformation after many years of mental sickness to mental health. And coming through that a lot of joy when one has really, really suffered and just doesn't want to live anymore. And you come through that and say, yeah, I want to live, I have a right to live, and I want to be here. Every day is a joyful just to be healthy and walk down the street and be healthy and happy and just to really appreciate life.
Yeah, because I remember we were talking before, and I think you mentioned to me that after this experience, you came to really appreciate your happiness much more. I think before the original episode, you know, I imagine your life was going well, but, you know, after having gone through the difficulties of those episodes and regaining your happiness, you mentioned that you know, from those experiences, it just gave you a much deeper appreciation of that happiness?
Absolutely. Prior to 1986, what I call the last of the breakdowns, I didn't tell many jokes. I now enjoy listening and telling humor. Walk down the street and enjoy nature. If a butterfly flies by, or a bird, or just beautiful colors, scenery, it's just like wow, I really enjoy it. And I read something many years ago when I was suffering, and it said, the amount of which we can really appreciate and enjoy life and be happy is balanced by how far we've gone the other way. Not that we should look for trouble so then we can therefore eventually be happy, but when life normally has obstacles and problems, and the more life or God or reality has given us challenges which we are there to surmount and face, when we get past it, the greater ability to really enjoy life and just appreciate and be happy in everything.
Yeah, and now you mentioned, because this show is, you know, about like the self-help resources that you used, you know, at that time. Because,
right.
You know, many of us just aren't aware of what's out there, you know,
Sure.
the ways that we can, you know, use this information.
Sure. Well, when 1988, with the last of 86 to 88, the last of my breakdowns, self-help organizations were just in their infancy, if even beginning. Here in the U.S., the DBSA, Depressive and Bipolar Support Alliance, I think only formed about 20 years ago. In Canada, Mood Disorders Association support groups weren't even there. So my message is now to people who may go through bipolar or other challenges, mentally or physically, is to go out there. There's a lot of self-help guides out there on the line in the library, to get into your own group, support group for parents, for your family, whatever. There's so much help out there now for people. And to remember, self-education. Go to the library, look at the books, read about psychiatry, psychology, spirituality, religion, all the good stuff. Listen to uplifting music, listen to shows like yours.
Oh, yeah.
Watch shows like yours.
Barry, let me ask you, so with the support group, you know, can you explain, like, what was it about it? What was it about getting together with other people that not only helped you, like, learn to kind of, like, understand your experience, but
Sure.
also helped you to bring back that happiness?
Thank you. Well, in those days when I was in those groups, it's before the more organized ones now, but I was in group psychotherapy for many years ago. We'd get together every Thursday after a university, and there was ages, different people from different backgrounds, and I found out that just being with average people who don't have training in psychiatry or psychology, including the psychologists in the group, we all have this inner wisdom. The fact that we sat as a large group, we all had something good and wise to say. Then I was in a men's group for a while at the end of this whole odyssey of psychiatry and self-help groups and stuff. And in a men's group, there was issues that we found that we could support each other. It is amazing that even a child, we all are come to this life with an intrinsic knowledge and wisdom, and we all have that, and we can. Sometimes we can't help ourselves, but we can help others because it's hard to be objective about your own problems. Self-help groups are wonderful for support.
Right, and I guess it's also like the sharing of experiences. I mean, the other members learn from your experience. You learn from the different coping strategies.
Absolutely.
Okay, Barry, then, you overcame these episodes through these resources, and then you found that you were able to rebuild your business and then move on from there. Could you explain that?
Thank you. It was a slow process. I got out of the psychiatric boarding house September 1st, 1989, and I moved to a room down the street, and my father gave me a piece of foam. He was an upholsterer, and I slept on the floor in my sleeping bag, and I got a phone. And I got in the phone, I said, hello to my old clients. It's Barry Shanebaum calling. I haven't been around for 3 years. I've had some challenges. I'd like to confirm your fax number. I never invoiced you. And I called them all up, and they all paid me, and somehow I knew that stigma was not there to hold me down. I was back in the world. I had to get out there. I had to show my face again, and just to get out there. And it's amazing that, when people face rough times, if you just say, I'm going to get out there and I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to be embarrassed or ashamed, and I have a right to be here, you get a strength somehow and an inner happiness that you have a right to do and move forward. Because no one's going to do it for us if we don't at least initiate it.
Sure, and that's again going back to the resources that are available. You found that you had to deal with it. You had to do it yourself, and you sought out the resources.
Absolutely.
So then you started back at your original business of photography.
Correct.
But then was it also a result of like overcoming the bipolar that you went on to create new businesses?
Correct. Overcoming the bipolar and the wisdom that can come from suffering and the self-knowledge and self-awareness changed me. As I rebuilt my business, I couldn't do it the same way. Initially, I built my business by telemarketing. In this case, it was more about networking and looking for opportunities. And the way Hope and Heroes came to being my photography book is I called up the late Charles Templeton, who was a friend of Billy Graham. And Charles Templeton, 50 years ago, was a more successful evangelist than Billy. Then Charles went off into business, and I said to Charles on the phone, the next time you talk to your friend Billy Graham, can you ask him if I can photograph him? And Charles said to me these exact words. He said, I don't want to go into this thing blind. What exactly do I tell Billy? And I said, tell Billy I'm doing a project of people of integrity and how they've impacted positively on the world. And then I said to myself, what a great idea for a book. And in my talks I say to people, ideas can come and pass through our minds at any given time, and if you have an idea for a book or a new recipe or a new bird feeder or a new type of camera or whatever, say to yourself, it's an idea, it has worth. Talk to people who will support you, not people who will say, nah, you can't do it. Go to the library, do some research, go on the internet, and it's the creative process that is so exciting. And without the suffering I went through, I doubt I would have thought of doing a book like this. So that's some of the blessing that comes from adversity, some of the happiness that comes from adversity. Facing adversity, I should say.
Sure. Okay. And also, I think throughout this whole process, facing the adversity, and then it's not like it was immediate. It took, I imagine, some time to just progress through the various stages to understand what was going on and learn how to just just adapt to it or change it and just rebuild your life. So perseverance, I guess, was very important to this. Just
perseverance, persistence, and let me talk for a moment on visualization. The power of seeing in your mind's eye that what you want for yourself. We all have this inner power, and say you want a job or a relationship or whatever it is, close your eyes and think for a second, I want this. See it in your eye, in your mind's eye, and then go out and make the actions towards it. You have to visualize, but also in the physical go out and make those steps. The visualization is a very, very, very powerful tool along with persistence and setting goals and getting people to support you.
Let's talk a bit more about visualization.
Okay.
Because, do you basically visualize situations, or how does that work more so?
Well, as I was rebuilding my life, I used to spend hours in the self-help section of bookstores and libraries. They all had a persistent theme of having a goal, believing in yourself, having supportive people, and visualization. They'd say, let's say you want the house, or you want the car, you want the woman or the man, whatever it is, the success. Get a magazine, cut out a picture, look at the picture, focus on it, and close your eyes and say, that's what I want, and literally bring that energy into yourself. That's the first step. If you only do that, you'll sit quietly at home and no one will call you. But you take that and you go out and you do your research and you make your phone calls and you associate with positive people, and step by step the inner belief in the visualization of what you want and the external action comes together, and in time comes manifest. Ask Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
Okay, let's bring this to happiness. Like, if one were to visualize one becoming, let's say, if they weren't happy, or if they're just marginally happy, much happier, what would those visualizations look like?
Well, for someone who needs to visualize happiness, when they're in a position of even mild or moderate depression, at times it's hard to get out of that. I say that if someone needs some medication to get through serious depression on a short-term or even medium long-term basis, if you need it, you should have it. Then when you're not seriously depressed, but only somewhat depressed and still a little happy, then write down on pen and paper, what do you want? You know, do you want the new job? Do you want to move? Do you want to get out of the basement? Do you want the home by the ocean? Whatever it is, and pretend for yourself that what you want. See, part of visualization is you have to tell your subconscious mind that what you want is already there. And I'm happy to add it right now. So in other words, you can't say, I want the beautiful home surrounded by gorgeous gardens. You have to say, close your eyes and say, I have the home, I have the gardens. When you know you don't have it in the physical, but you have it internally. And then that attracts energy, and you have to physically go out and then get the job or make the contacts, create the book, create the play, have the TV show, and your internal energy will support you as you believe that you can actually deserve to have it.
You know, it's interesting because, like, a lot of times those visualizations will relate to, let's say, our life circumstances, what we actually do and all. And I know, like, one of the techniques that I've personally used that I promote on the show for happiness has to do with not necessarily quote-unquote visualizing, but actually getting in touch with the feeling of happiness. Because just as we can visualize ourselves in different situations that we're not in, we have the ability to, if let's say we're not as happy as we want to, just envision ourselves and actually begin to feel much happier just by accessing that feeling.
Absolutely. Sometimes when I seldom have bad days. I have some bad dreams, but not bad days. But I have a bit of a bad day. I'll just sit quietly and sort of connect with my energy and say, well, things are good. I mean, it's normal that things will go off here and there, but try to connect, take a deep breath. You know, when you feel stressed, take a deep breath, you know, inspiration, it's all connected. You know, just relaxing for a moment or walk out in nature, listen to some uplifting music, watch something good on TV, look at the positive book. We can get out of that funk and we can bring that happiness and realize that we're living in America or Canada. We're not living in some other countries where they have more natural disasters or disease or famine, whatever. We're here. We're in a lucky to be here.
Right. Okay, so you basically use the groups, the self-help groups, and visualization. What other kinds of like resources did you implement in your recovery?
Over the years, as I rebuilt my life and got past the bipolar, I read about the power of color. I would surround myself with bright colors. Still do. I love yellow and orange and reds. Blue and green and brown and gray are common colors. They're also very grounding colors. I would listen to music that brought me good energy. Nature, so important to go out in the woods, go by the lake. If you have a cat or a dog, hug your cat or dog if they let you, and be around people who love and support you. It all brings in positive energy. Read positive books. I used to live in the self-help section of bookstores and bought a lot of books. I bought too many. I sold some off and given away to charity. But whatever can bring in the positive energy. And sometimes we have to take the gamble, the risk of trying something or reaching and reaching out and volunteering. Volunteering is so important. When you help another person, you forget about yourself. And you feel good when someone says thank you. That brings healing energy. Helping people.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You know?
Sure. Let me ask you something, because you were fortunate. You were fortunate in a sense, and I think most of us are fortunate in this way, that like you went through a very difficult period.
Extremely.
But you maintained a kind of an underlying hope, a kind of like you had faith and optimism. You had faith that these resources would work. What can you tell people who are experiencing, let's say, who are not happy or just marginally happy? What can you tell them to encourage them to utilize the resources, to not say to themselves, well, you know, this is something I'm fated to, and
Okay.
you know.
I'd like to add that I didn't add before, and to answer your question, is a belief in a higher power. Whatever your version of God is, if you believe in a God or a higher power, believe that there is a power out there that as you strive out there, God, or whatever your belief of God is, will help you. It is very important to be proactive. Many people who get badly depressed or lack hope, whatever, just say, well, you know, it's the government, it's my friends, it's the family, my wife doesn't understand me, and you can blame. And sure, there are people to blame, but you don't get ahead by blaming or blaming for long. It is up to us to get out of our houses. I love going to libraries. Go to a library, go to a self-help group, watch positive shows on television, associate with people who will support you, believe that you can do it, even when you think you can't do it. Then fine, acknowledge it, and you say, today I can't do it, tomorrow I'm going to try, and I'm going to give my best, and literally even set goals. 5 minutes a day, make an effort, then 10 minutes a day. Sometimes you have to start really, really small. And I had to start small in my life like 17, 18 years ago. I started from nothing. And I started that somehow I could get back to where I was and even surpass where I was, which I think I have.
Oh, certainly. Actually, I wanted to get into that again. Eventually, as a result of these experiences, you became an inspirational speaker.
Yes.
Could you explain a bit what your message is and how you communicate that?
My message is I talk to mental health groups. I also talk to high schools and corporate in different areas. The message is, if it's mental health, I get more nitty-gritty on the mental health. The general message is, it is normal and natural for life to present us with obstacles. That is part of life. When we accept that as natural, we need to move forward with it. In other words, an adversarial situation is an opportunity to strengthen yourself. It may not feel like an opportunity at the time. So when life is rough, you have to believe that it's not that everyone's dumping on you or life is giving it to you. That is part of life. And it is an opportunity. And I say, for instance, when you want to strengthen your muscles, you know, when you resist against a weight, call it an obstacle. You build up your biceps by resisting an obstacle. When you want to get stronger, you don't look for trouble because you can get stronger, but life will always present challenges. When you go internally and find out your strength, and externally by libraries and friends and stores and visualization, that all together gives an opportunity to become stronger. So it's the combination of the two.
Okay, then bring that back to happiness. How does that message? Because here's the reason I asked that.
Okay.
There's research that kind of demonstrates that, you know, in life we can have different successes. We can, for example, gain advanced degrees. We can make a lot of money. We can achieve a lot of things that may or may not bring us greater happiness. A lot of times. So how do you incorporate the message of happiness with the message of striving and being the people we can be?
Thank you. I'd like to incorporate self-esteem and recommend the books by Dr. Nathaniel Branden, who's also in Hope and Heroes. He's the pioneer, one of the pioneers of the self-esteem movement. When we know that just because we are alive, that we have a right to our importance and that no one can take that away from us, that will build us. People who go through mental and physical challenges at times, it can erode your self-esteem. So as you're down on the ground, mentally or physically, and you're not too happy, if somehow you can just remember that no one has a right to attack you or force you down or take away your self-esteem. And when we reclaim that power that we were born with, that is our God-given belief that we are all important equally and no one is right to take it away. And like people who've been in jail for years, Nelson Mandela, also in Hope and Heroes, spent 27 years in solitary in South Africa, and he says, I was there for all those years, and he said, I would not let them beat me down, and I treated myself with dignity, and I treated my jailers with dignity. And the blessing was back, they treated him better because even though he was caged up, he treated them with respect. We all deserve to remember that we have self-esteem, we're born with it, and we should always keep it.
Right, well, let me ask you, if we're in a situation like Nelson Mandela, or situations in our lives when perhaps we may not be respected by the people we're around, what do we tell ourselves? What is it that we have to remind ourselves in that?
We have to remind ourselves that sometimes there's some battles that we need to fight and take on and confront with perhaps the boss or the person at work or the spouse, the loved one. You have to tell them something in a loving way, in a professional way, or sometimes this is a battle I will let go. We can't fight every single battle. I still reckon my own thing, what things do I ignore, what things I face. And when you're in a situation and you choose which ones are important to you, and then you approach it with a position of self-esteem that I have a right to be treated with respect, but when I tell you you're not treating me right, I also have to honor you and treat you respectfully and not yell at you because you're yelling at me.
Yeah.
You know, and keep that integrity, you know, of respect for ourselves and others. And that comes along with a lot of happiness when you keep that integrity and self-esteem.
Oh yeah, what I like to do is, like, a lot of times, you know, we're human beings. We're not perfect. We all make mistakes. So a lot of times when another person may not be respecting us, may be causing us to be tempted to feel, you know, evaluate ourselves like they do, it's always good to kind of like remember, you know, if they're treating, you know, me or other people like that, in a sense, that's really something that they're dealing with. It's a problem that they have and all. And that's
Exactly.
So not owning it, just remembering that our evaluation of ourselves is our own. It's not dependent on other people.
Exactly. And I had to learn over the years as I rebuilt my life that when I'm in a stressful situation and someone is not treating me right, at least in my opinion, take a deep breath, take a step back, even my own mind, and look at it and say, I don't like this situation, but I'm going to handle myself with dignity, and I can walk away. I learned from my cat. If I happen to bug my cat at home and it doesn't like it, it walks away or it swats at me. It makes a decision. We can learn also from the animal kingdom. As long as we remember to keep the consciousness of who and what we are and where we draw the line, what we will accept, what we will not accept, and what are our goals, where are we going, what's our mission, why are we here, what are we doing? You know, what makes us happy?
Excellent. Barry, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I think you've been an inspiration to a lot of people who, you know, may be in the kind of situation you were in before and can now understand, you know, not just that it's possible to really regain one's life and move forward greatly, but also exactly, you know, how to do that. Okay, thank you. That's all we have time for today. In the future, we'll be exploring other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next time here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful, it's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny, so let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.